everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I, of course, am Mr. Warren Hayes, and this is the place where we talk about professional wrestling for a couple of hours right here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes or on your favorite podcast application, wherever it is. Hello, welcome. I hope you're into pro wrestling, because that's, I'm the only podcast that talks about it. We've talked about this way in the past. Don't bother looking around for anyone else. If this is the first time that you're looking at it for a wrestling podcast and you find there's no one else. So, just listen to me and never mind everyone else. Leave a like on this video if you're watching it on YouTube, or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or a 5-star rating on Spotify. All those things would be very much tremendous. And subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. I do some live streams there as well, twice a week, which are tons of fun, where a lot of the content that you hear on the podcast comes from. So, you get the unedited versions. We talk about stuff that doesn't necessarily end up on the podcast either. So it's a good time. It really is a good time. If you have the opportunity, to drop in one night, that would be tremendous. I'd really, really love it. And to really join the community and, nice people, a nice live chat, just good folks just wanting to chat about pro wrestling. And that's really all that matters ultimately. As for this week's podcast, it's a bit of a grab bag of a bunch of topics. There's no like one, overarching topic. There's a bunch of little things. Look, like we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about some topics that have been going on in the wrestling community, over the past week, the specifically the wrestling pundit space, I guess. I hate that I use those words in that sequence. I will never do it again. But, there's been some stuff going around. I'm going to talk about a few things like that. We're going to talk about the New Japan Pro Wrestling departures. We're going to talk about this article saying that AEW is never going to be on Netflix, that was published by The Hollywood Reporter. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about WWE's Netflix numbers as well. There's, a whole sprinkling of a whole bunch of stuff. I think there's something for everyone on this week's show. As opposed to the other weeks where it's just for a few people, Warren. No. Like there's always something for everyone every week. But, this week we're just like, we're spreading wide. Okay, that's enough. Let's get to it. Thank you very much for being here. WrestleNomics today put together a chart expressing the global number of views for all of the WWE content that airs on Netflix, because Netflix had their released their biannual, I can do words, their biannual report called What We Watch, right? Which they release in their Q4, during their Q4 earnings call, essentially. So, of course, Brandon is tracking all of this and he's compiling all the numbers together. And he did the whole thing for the PLEs, for Raw, for SmackDown, for NXT. Anything that is produced by WWE shows up on this list, right? And on this chart. But I want to, you can find it on WrestleNomics. You just go over there and you sub to the Patreon. It's one of the best wrestling related Patreons that you can subscribe to. There's always great information there. But I want to take a look at the pay-per-view data here that that's provided, because this is all data, views, essentially, right? All this data is provided directly from Netflix, so it's not Dave Meltzer, getting his numbers from his sources and pumping out estimates, or people doing crazy ass math. This is data publicly available from Netflix that they release unto the world. What we want to point out here before we go on is the little definitions here, right? The little caveats before we start talking about all of the PLEs and their numbers here. These are the global views for WWE content from January 1st to December 31st, 2025. Global views are defined as viewing hours divided by runtime. That's Netflix's way of evaluating things. So the number of viewing hours divided by the runtime of whatever's being aired. the metric representation of accounts viewing, not people viewing, meaning that as opposed to Nielsen, which calculates actually the number of people in a household, the metric here is saying one account, one viewer, essentially, when there could possibly be 2, 3, 4, maybe more people in the room watching on one account. Netflix doesn't track the number of eyeballs, just the number of accounts logged in watching. Only Raw and Unreal are available on Netflix in the United States. All WWE content represented here is available internationally. The data represents viewing that happened at any time from July 1st to December 31st, 2025. I think that might be a little typo on his end. Though much of the viewing occurs live or soon after, content released at the end of this period, late December, has the disadvantage of having less time to accumulate viewing. Sure, that's clear. So, if we take a look at the numbers here, I find this to be very interesting. The most viewed pay-per-view on Netflix, WWE pay-per-view, on one single night that was viewed was the Royal Rumble, which was, in effect, the first pay-per-view on Netflix, right? Royal Rumble 2025, 3.2 million views. 3.2 million people tuned in to watch that. Then the Elimination Chamber dropped a little to 2 million, but then the WrestleMania nights boosted back up a little, 2.5 million for night 1, 2.9 million for night 2, but didn't hit the highs of the Royal Rumble, which is really interesting. Then drops all the way down to 1.5 million, practically half the amount of views as they got for WrestleMania Night 2 for Backlash on May 10. 1.5 million views, 1.7 million views for Money in the Bank, 1.3 million views for Night of Champions, 900,000 views for Evolution 2025. I'm telling you, their counter-programming strategy hurt them more than it hurt AEW. It was a complete and utter failure. And I don't know why people didn't talk about that more in their end-of-year lists as like the, worst promotional tactic of the year or whatever. The counter-programming was an absolute disaster. Then the 2 nights of SummerSlam, 1.5 and 1.7 nights views, respectively. And then Clash in Paris, 1.3 million, WrestlePalooza 1.9, Crown Jewel Perth 1.4, and then the Survivor Series War Games 1.8. And you'll notice that once we're over the Evolution show, everything sort of lives in this. We sort of see a pattern here, right? Like everything is kind of within the same parameters. 1.8 million for War Games, WrestlePalooza 1.9, SummerSlam Night 2 1.7. I think at 1.5, 1.3, 1.4 for SummerSlam Night 1, Clash in Paris, and Crown Jewel Perth. So we're kind of in those areas. It feels as if like once we were done with WrestleMania, once the initial excitement of watching WWE on Netflix passed, which was the Royal Rumble, and then WrestleMania passed, which of course it's fucking WrestleMania, so that should get big numbers. Everything else just sort of petered off at somewhere, always under 2 million, but mostly over 1 million, outside of Evolution, of course, being the exception, that only generated 900,000 views. Elimination Chamber, 2 million. Did I not mention it? Excuse me. If I didn't mention it, I apologize. But Elimination Chamber on March 1st did 2 million views. And you sort of look at this and you're like, okay, well, the novelty of WWE still being on Netflix, I think still carried on here. I think this is very, very interesting data. But folks, I got to tell you, I look at this. These are global numbers. This is not the United States. The United States is not counted in the PLE numbers. These are global numbers. In all of the regions in which Netflix slides itself into, across the world, How many countries again? Dozens upon dozens of countries. These are the numbers that WWE does. Is it me? Or are these numbers not impressive when you look at it that way? I'm sorry, but WrestleMania not crossing the bar of 3 million views when the Royal Rumble did is kind of perplexing when it's supposed to be like this juggernaut event, bigger than the Super Bowl, et cetera, or as big as the Super Bowl. And isn't WWE supposed to be this global brand with this enormous global reach? Where are they reaching out to? I think what this is telling us is that the interest, the true power of WWE really comes through only in the United States. And I think everywhere else is kind of mid. I don't know. I failed to see how these big time events that we are constantly told are like these huge, tremendous events. I failed to see that they're that big a deal worldwide, globally, when these are the numbers that they're picking up. Isn't this weird? For the biggest company in the world doing numbers on the level of NBC shows goes to show their interest isn't as big as they think it is. That's where I am. Like, these are Friday, like 1.3 million, 1.4. Like, these are numbers that they used to do on Fox. And this is supposed to be across the globe. In every home, every person that has a Netflix account has access to WWE. And we were told so much when the deal was announced that WWE, truly a global brand, will be reaching out to people all across the world, anywhere, kind of thing. Everyone will finally be able to tune in easily to WWE. Are they really tuning in? Are people in this? How many people are we in the world now? 5 billion? How many people is there on planet Earth right now? Hey, Google, how many people are on planet Earth right now?
On the website worldometers.info, they say, world population clock, 8.3 billion people.
8.3 billion. 8.3 billion. That's I was saying, what did I say? 5? I can go. Let me go kick rocks here for a second. 8 billion people. No. Stop, Google. No, we don't need you anymore. Cancel. It doesn't matter. You're still talking. 8.3 billion people, right? And you've got 1.8 across the world, let's say, watching Survivor Series War Games. I don't know, guys. And I feel like it should be bigger. Is it just me? Is it just me that finds these numbers profoundly unimpressive? And the thing is that when you look at these numbers here, right, that I'm highlighting right now on the screen for those of you with the benefit of video, the numbers that Brandon set everything up so that we can see what the numbers from January to June 2025 were, and then the little added on extra views that came from July to December for these shows here. So the numbers I was giving out were the total amount of views for, let's say, Royal Rumble to Night of Champions. That also included the views that these shows collected from July to December. People going back to watch it and tuning in late and whatnot. So like the Royal Rumble, for instance, 3 million watched it within the first 6 months of the year. And then another 200,000 people watched it outside of that period from July to December. So really it did 3 million in the original, in its original position. No, Night of Champions did 1 million. It almost didn't even, it did 1 million on its first, during the first period. Money in the Bank, 1.6, Backlash, 1.5. Mania, night 1, 2.4, 2.8 for night 2. They got a little bit of a boost after. There really wasn't all that much interest in the WrestleManias after. It's crazy. So, I mean, I don't think this is interesting for them. I don't think these are really cool numbers. I know Netflix recently put out a statement saying, "Oh, we're satisfied. You know, we're very happy with the results." And I wonder just how satisfied they really are, how much they're putting on a front. Remember, Netflix can renegotiate in 5 years, right? At the at the end of the first 5 years, they can sit them back down and say, "Yeah, well, let's open this up again. Let's talk." It'll be interesting to see how WWE continues to perform. But that's not all that Brandon had for us. He also did this. He compiled the watch time for all Netflix television shows, not movies, TV shows. All right? He made this chart here where he combines the viewing time, the watch time, I should say, the watch time, not the views, the watch time. So the amount of time that people are watching these Netflix shows. Put it all together, again, based on the What We Watch data release that happened with the Q4 stuff. Right? So we have the hours viewed here, which is, of course, dominated by the juggernaut Stranger Things. 2.50 billion hours viewed. Crazy. 2.5 billion. That is a juggernaut, friends and family. Holy shit. And then what else do we have here in the top shows? The Wednesday show, Wednesday Addams, right? Squid Game, The Rookie. In the top 5 is Gilmore Girls. Folks, you have to school me here. Have there been new episodes of Gilmore Girls? Or is this the old Gilmore Girls show? Please let me know. Please let me know. I don't know. Shameless, Bon Appetit, Your Majesty, Grey's Anatomy, Suits, the show from 2011 is in the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In the top 10 is Suits. Young Sheldon, further down the chart, beats out anything WWE. Of course, you cannot beat the Big Bang Theory universe. It will always be attached to wrestling in some way or fashion. But what interests us is, where does WWE fall here? To make this viable for WWE, Brandon combined not just the Raw views, but the PLEs, SmackDown, NXT, and Unreal as well. And there's a little extra sliver here. Not quite sure what that is. But he put the whole thing all together. And they fall here between Val Salvaje, which is probably, Scandinavian, some Scandinavian show, Swedish, Norwegian, something, and The Vampire Diaries. That's the company that Raw WWE keeps. And, if you look at all the, the viewing bars here, all the bars of views, there's a bit of a trend here. No one's sticking out. Pretty much, it's a very natural, very slow decline. And suddenly you have Raw in there. Again, I don't think this is all that impressive. And I'll tell you why this is not all that impressive. This Monday Night Raw produces content, new content, 5 hours of new content every week for 52 weeks in the year. You're getting Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and I understand that Raw is only the only one available on Netflix in the US. I get it. But we're going global here, boys. Okay? So they produce 5 hours of content a week, notwithstanding the pay-per-views. 5 hours a week. Whereas The Vampire Diaries and Sullivan's Crossing and Henry Danger and Dynamite Kiss, these are all shows that have seasons. They're series. They stop, and then you don't get another one until another year or two or whatever, right? These are not shows that produce content 52 weeks in a year. It is insane to me that all these shows here, all these shows that have finite starts and stops are all able. All of those I'm showing right now, the top 10 we talked about, and The Walking Dead here. Let's throw in some more. The Walking Dead, The Witcher, Breaking Bad, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Dexter, the 2017 SWAT show, House, One Piece, Paw Patrol, Lucifer, which is a fucking old show, The Sandman, Alice in Borderland. All of these shows all rank higher than Monday Night Raw, and you have less ultimately to consume week after week. And yet this is where we're at. Where for Brandon to add for even anything WWE related to show up on this list of the top 75 shows ranked by view time on Netflix, Brandon had to combine all things WWE for them to even show up. If we just put on Raw all by themselves, they wouldn't even be in the top 75 shows. Neither would be SmackDown or NXT. It would be beat out by Peppa Pig. Peppa Pig has more global views than Monday Night Raw. Netflix and the world, the whole wrestling world, is getting conned by these people. It's a con at this point because we're getting the hard data and it is not even remotely as impressive. It is not even remotely as impressive as WWE makes it out to be. As WWE wants us to believe it is. The global brand stuff. How they influence the world, right? Remember that one? WWE continues to influence the world. How they're this driving cultural factor, in Saudi Arabia and all that. It's all bullshit. They're all following the money. That's all there is to it. There is no real cultural impact from WWE. Only in the United States does this show matter. Because when you start putting things down and you show things, how things are positioned all throughout the world. You've got Emily in Paris, which is a much more relevant show across the globe as far as view time goes on Netflix than anything WWE produces. Anything at all. It is a stunning graph, an absolute stunning graph. The only way Brandon managed to get WWE on this graph of the top 75 shows ranked by watch time on Netflix globally was to put everything WWE produces into one bar, into one category. Otherwise, not a single one of them would show up. So again, WWE is a very important part of the zeitgeist of entertainment in the United States. I will acquiesce that. Is it as big as, again, they make it out to be? No, I don't think so. But nonetheless, it is a significant, it still has some weight. But across the world, this global brand talk is bullshit. And the more we see data like this provided directly from Netflix, we can see it with our own fucking eyes, folks. It's not even remotely close to being this massive global movement. WWE struggles outside of the United States. And that is all there is to it. It's just really that simple. There's the full graph again for those of you with the benefit of video. There's the full graph so that you can let all these bars sink in. Like 500 million watched, 500 million watch time is impressive or sounds impressive, but when you put it into context, then you're like, is it that impressive? And we're talking in the 500 million or whatever it is. Maybe it's more along like 400 million. I can't really tell. Like the graphic, it's a PNG. So, it's not super duper interactive. In fact, it's not even interactive at all. Let's say the 350 million views that all of WWE got throughout from July to December 31st, 2025, that's all of WWE's content altogether. There's not one show that sticks out. There's not one show that sticks out globally. Again, they would not, if you separated the shows, if Brandon hadn't put all of WWE's productions into one category, not a single WWE show would show up in the top 75. Now in the top 100, maybe, and maybe that's their target too. We don't know, but ultimately, we got to stop with this global brand bullshit. We have to stop pretending that WWE is this great, international media company force of nature, because it's not. It's all it is it's a pro wrestling outfit. It's a silly sports entertainment company with its silly little show on Netflix. That's all there is to it. God bless WrestleNomics and the work they do. Thank you, Brendan Thurston. Once again, you continue to justify my subscription every single time. But you never know with me. I might go off on a tangent. Y'all might think of something where you're like, hey, Warren, maybe we should talk about this. Because, I think the last couple of days I've found, it's just like there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of animation with wrestling fans online, but it's all like, I don't know, internet stuff. It's all like, oh, I didn't like what this podcaster said and whatnot. And I don't think it's necessarily interesting to talk about, I don't necessarily, it depends what, but there's some podcasters who are like, oh, I can't believe this really bad take. I'm like, well, and I agree. And then, sometimes it makes me get a little hot and bothered myself, but I'm like, it's just stuff that I don't feel is interesting to talk about. Because, and see here, I don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. It's such a fucking Warren Hayes thing to do here. In particular, I think one of the weirdest topics that has popped up amongst wrestling fans recently is this idea that AEW isn't elevating anyone, right? And I'm not naming names. You can all figure out who started this discussion. I'm not doing that. I'm not naming names. You can figure it out. But it's been a whole thing, right? And here's the thing, right? Here's the legitimate thing. Of course, always in my opinion, because but I can say that my opinions are legitimate. They're mine. Okay. I don't think AEW is perfect at it by any means. I don't think any professional wrestling organization books perfectly. I think there's just it's levels of how bad are they, essentially. That's pretty much it. I really don't think that I really don't think it's a question of whether I think right now we're all grading towards the bottom, right? The curve is very, very low. And I believe that that there is some criticism that is warranted, but I feel like people have very short-term memory on stuff when it comes to Tony Khan in particular, and him being able to elevate guys into a main event spot. While I think he's not perfect by any means, and I think that there are instances where he did absolutely drop the ball on some people, we have a tendency to forget that he elevated to babyface superstar level, the sixth guy in the Bullet Club Elite, and he just elevated that guy to the biggest babyface in his company. He took a guy that, the other promotion just passed on, that they didn't latch onto. They didn't see the superstar quality in him, and he made that guy a superstar as well. He decided to belt up a 25-year-old kid, who had no proven track record as a world champion or even as a star anywhere. I'm talking about MJF in this case. There's other instances. I mean, you can talk about Kyle Fletcher 100%, and there's a lot of good stuff here, but you can talk about some of the fumbles. You can talk about Orange Cassidy. You can talk about, despite the fact that Orange Cassidy, it depends on how you want to look at it when it comes to Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy was a guy who was just a meme wrestler on the indies. Just a joke guy, a guy, like the Dan the Dad and, all the irony wrestlers from the day. And he gets called up and everyone's like, how is this going to translate onto national television? And it turns out Orange was one of the best bets that they did. And they worked him perfectly to become one of the most recognizable faces of the company in an associated act. Now you can say they had the opportunity to truly make a top guy out of Orange Cassidy, but they didn't, right? So, you can perceive that as a fumble. I think it's a little bit of column A, it's a little bit of column B. But if you ask me, the idea that AEW was able to make this guy, this meme wrestler, this comedy wrestler, into one of the most fan favorite, recognizable acts of the company, that's saying something. This is also a company that belted up Tony Storm, who struggled at the other place to have anything happen. And Tony Khan went completely all in on Tony Storm. Willow Nightingale's another very good example that aren't necessarily top people in the company like her and Orange Cassidy, but nonetheless have become acts that you immediately associate with AEW. Like it's their own talent, right? Look at Powerhouse Hobbs. Powerhouse Hobbs may not have left AEW as a former world champion or, anything to that effect. Not a guy who was up in the upper echelons of the company, but this is a guy that no one knew about, that no one had ever heard of, who was, running the dankest of indies over on the West Coast. I think he was a West Coast guy, right? And then they bring him in and Tony, nonetheless, even if it wasn't a huge push, was able to elevate him, put him on TV, and put him in a position where he's like, okay, well, I want to go try my luck in WWE, and WWE rubbing their hands together and like, hell yeah, let's go, Like these are all marks of, these are all elevations. So, and I don't know exactly what more you're supposed to say here. This is a promotion that has used guys this is a promotion that has used guys that it's leaned on guys like Chris Jericho, John Moxley, Kenny Omega. These guys were all world champions, all top guys, but were all used in one way or another to try and get new guys over. I think his track record, he being Tony Khan, as far as elevating people, is much better than people today arguing about it give him credit for. I legitimately believe that. And even if it's, because here's the other argument, right, that I've heard, especially talking about this in some of the group chats. It's like, oh, well, a lot of these people that we're talking about here were sure things. Like MJF was a sure thing, right? Look, MJF I think you had to be blind to not see the talent, right? And what he had to offer. But MJF, previous to going to AEW, was just a guy in MLW and not a champion. He wasn't like the top guy of MLW. He was just a guy there. Well, I mean, just a guy. You know, more than just a guy, but he wasn't exactly their main eventer. He wasn't the guy running the show. He wasn't a main attraction, you know, and Tony essentially got behind MJF and AEW and said, look, you're going to be a star here. You're going to be one of our anchors, one of the pillars, you know. People were telling me, you know, oh, well, Hiroshi Tanahashi said in an interview in 2018 that Hangman Adam Page was a great wrestler and he was destined for great things. Well, isn't that nice? It isn't, like, legitimately, that's nice. And look, Hiroshi Tanahashi, for real, has always had an incredible eye for talent. So, yeah, I mean, okay. So Hiroshi Tanahashi saw it in 2018. Good for him. New Japan did still manage to do jack shit with them. So the talent falls onto Tony's lap. Tony's going to be like, yeah, I'm going to push this guy. And the thing is that none of these guys are necessarily guarantees that they're going to get themselves over. That's the thing. It's not a guarantee that the audience is going to accept these individuals as the top guys. But a combination of these talents being great and some adept booking was able to get these over, right? I don't think anyone looks back at the argument from a couple of years ago now, like with 2020 hindsight, okay? I don't think anyone looks back now to when Will Ospreay came into the company as they were building Swerve Strickland, right? If you recall, there was this whole argument, this whole discussion going on online as to whether or not, you know, Will Ospreay being the hottest, you know, being fucking Will Ospreay. It's like, oh, whatever plans you had for the world title, scrap them and strap up Will, right? But no, Tony held the course with Swerve so that Swerve could win his first world championship and even beat Will beat Will in a championship match. So it's like, you look back on it now, and that was absolutely the right move to get another guy up there, Swerve, to get another guy up there, so that so you'd have, you know, one of these where Tony could have another top guy, another credible top guy to help push the company forward as a superstar. And now you just have Will waiting in the wings to come back, and every AEW fan is just champing at the bit for Will Ospreay to return at this point. So, you know, it's like you can have the talents, but you have to be able as a booker to book these talents well. We know of another company who has extremely talented pro wrestlers, but somehow, oftentimes, fails to put these people over, fails to get these extremely talented wrestlers over with their crowd, or they do a half-assed job of it. You know, multiple examples I'm sure popping into your heads right now. And that's what makes a booker. So you can have the greatest talent in the world, but if you fumble how he's presented, how he's turned into a top guy, well, then that's a legitimate problem. So no matter what the level of superstar you have, if you can't handle them, it's all going to fall flat on your face. So I get, so, okay, I didn't want to talk about it, but there you go. I just did a 15-minute rant about it, maybe even 20. I don't know. But that's the thing. And look, like I said, I want to be super clear. There are people that I think Tony was completely off base with, that I think Ricky Starks is a great example of that as well, where there was no real follow-up to all of the great stuff that he was doing. And next thing you know, he's in a tag team with Big Bill. No disrespect to Big Bill, but Ricky Starks wasn't meant to be a tag team wrestler. The Ray Phoenix singles run was something that should have happened. I think Ray Phoenix would have 100% been a tippy top guy in his company. I legitimately believe that. Those are just a couple coming off of the top of my head here, but I'm sure if you think about it, there's other examples of, Tony. I think Daniel Garcia is a flub. They're not all going to be successes, but to sit here and say, to get behind a microphone and say with conviction and verve that AEW doesn't elevate people is preposterous, because there's evidence of that multiple times that it's happened. In more occasions, I would argue it happened more often than what the other guys do. But I think this is a circumstance of certain podcasters having their favorites and seeing that their favorites are not getting pushed, and then suddenly getting upset that their favorites are not getting pushed. Overall, that's what I think it is, right? So, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. That's not the idea. It's not a question of that. Look, everyone is opinions are like nostrils. Everybody has them, right? Yes, I know the expression is something else, but it's kind of cliched, and I wanted to try out something else. The other, whoever said this is entirely entitled to their opinion, and it's fine. Like, they can it's absolutely their prerogative, right? But sometimes it's like an opinion can stray on the side of being wrong when it's clearly identified as, when you can clearly poke holes in it and say, no, it's wrong because this. Have you considered this and that and whatnot? So I don't know. I also think that sometimes when you're a wrestling podcaster, it's okay to take breaks to reinvigorate your love of what you're spending your career talking about. I also think that's something important. It's something that I would 100% do. If I ever turn into, a pure curmudgeon and I'm just upset at everything and I don't like it and so on and so forth, I just like, okay, you know what? We're going to take a break. And maybe I'll do live streams, but we'll talk about comic books instead. We'll talk about how to make a great stew instead. I'll just step away from it for a while, find the love again, and then come back. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I really, really don't. TK's biggest issue is he doesn't always pull the trigger on things when he should, but overall, TK and AEW have been far better at booking and creative over WWE and most other promotions. I think anyone complaining about AEW not elevating people has not watched New Japan over the past 2 years. 2024 and particularly 2025 New Japan. It's bash your head against the wall bad. Tony AEW has never fully put the rocket ship on anyone. The logo comes first. I hope that changes with Ospreay's title change. I mean, what is the rocket strap? Just to be clear. And I'm not trying to be nasty here, Boris. That's not because I feel like it means something different to a lot of people, where the rocket strap is like, immediately make this person like, the minute this person shows up on TV, like, to me, okay, this person debuts on your TV and you strap them up and you push them to the moon, kind of thing, right? A Kazuchika Okada returning from excursion Kazuchika Okada type of thing, right? I think that's my definition of the rocket strap. But see, I don't think a guy like Will Ospreay was not rocket strapped when he came in. I think, hang on a second. because Will is Will, and Will was okay to losing to everyone, right? That's how he is. He was still always involved in big time angles and a lot of important stuff, and he's going to be doing it again this year with Callum Newman over in New Japan. You know, is this a guy you need to rocket strap? Because people are just going to be like excited for him regardless. Darby, look at much Darby was elevated from an extreme nobody. This is, but yeah, okay, I'd put him like around like in an Orange Cassidy boat. I'd put him in an Orange Cassidy boat. And if people are waiting for, see, because I think elevation for a lot of people just means world championship. And I guess to a degree, but you can be elevated out of nowhere and have a really solid mid-card spot, upper mid-card and whatnot, and still be an attraction and people be excited to see your matches. I think that's also an elevation. TK's biggest strength is tag team matchmaker. Hell yeah. That I think is going to be his legacy. Tony has his company face in Adam Page or Ospreay or even Mox. He's got, or even Swerve. He's got guys. Very hot baby faces, you know. Jay White had a rocket strap in New Japan. Kyle Fletcher feels the same in AEW. Jay White did have a bit of a rocket strap, didn't he? It's like everyone wants this to happen within 6 months, you know, or within 3 months. And then it's like, but I appreciate, I'm in no rush. And I prefer that we set things up nice and naturally. Like if you don't think, like Kyle Fletcher, right, is an excellent example. If you don't think Kyle Fletcher is going to be a world champion in this company, you're delusional. Like they gave him a shot last year, right, with the Hangman, and he failed, as he should, because this was his first time in a big time world championship match, and he was just bettered by the champ. But then he's going to get better still, and he's going to learn some more. And the next time he gets a title shot, he's going to come across as a little more serious. He's not going to come across as a goofball. It's going to come across as a little more seriously. You're going to look at Kyle Fletcher and you're going to be like, hey, maybe this kid has something, right? Could be. And you see, you could wonder with Konosuke Takeshita, what is he going to do with Takeshita? I think for a while, look, I'll be curious to see what they do with an inevitable babyface push for Konosuke Takeshita, because I still think that's absolutely in the cards. I think that's something that's going to happen. And if done right, I think a babyface soup could absolutely enter the realm of top guys there in AEW. Will he work out? Well, that'll be a question that we'll have to see, but at least we'll have tried, right? Look, it's like what they're doing with Chris Statlander, right? If I were in Tony Khan's shoes, I would do the exact same thing with Chris Statlander. I would have tried it out. I was like, okay, I got to get the belt off of Tony because we just got to keep things fresh, and I'm going to try to elevate someone else. Now, is Chris Statlander being elevated successfully or not? I think that's still up for debate, but you know, I'm not ready to I'm not ready to crucify it. Like, I'm not sitting here saying it's great. I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm just saying I'm not feeling it, but I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's great either, but at least he's trying. And that's you have to commend that at least we're giving it the old college try here. And there's a lot of it that falls upon the talent as well. You know, there's all sorts of circumstances, right? Because if it was so easy to get people over in pro wrestling, everyone would be a megastar. Am I right? Am I right? So last week, the Hollywood Reporter put out an article talking about how, well, this was the title, AEW not going to Netflix in Warner Bros. Deal, and a few other random sports rights landing spots we have learned from the 519-page joint proxy filing. What are those words that I just put together? Well, last week, Warner Bros. Discovery and Netflix filed a proxy statement. Now, don't ask me exactly what that means. But what it is specifically, but it's a filing. It's a 519 page filing, which serves as an update to their potential deal that's coming down the pike. There's another idiom right there that we're not going to fuck around with. It's coming down the pike. We're not really interested in the Warner Bros. Discovery Netflix deal and the nature of it and whatnot. Not until it's all been concluded. Then we'll pick things apart. At this point, it's still so much up in the air. But we have some things here that this article points out stuff in regards to professional wrestling, which I would like to I'd like to talk about, share with you in case you haven't seen this go by, and maybe you've seen it go by with some aggregators. And because this news was aggregated a lot, and since aggregators are mostly idiots, they really didn't get the full context of what's going on here. So we're going to be talking about instances of All Elite Wrestling showing up in this proxy filing between Netflix and Warner Bros. Discovery. So here are some quotes here directly from the article. Though neither the phrase All Elite Wrestling nor the acronym AEW appear once in the proxy, page 53 foretold the future for the WWE competitor. Really, it was the absence of all the words and letters that informed some of this reporting. Following the close of the Netflix Warner Bros. Deal, All Elite Wrestling rights will ostensibly remain with Discovery, aka the Global Linear Networks company, though the league's weekly series and pay-per-view events are expected to continue streaming on HBO Max throughout the remainder of AEW's current contract. And then points out that AEW Dynamite airs on TBS and AEW Collision on TNT, both stream on HBO Max. That's not necessarily unexpected, but it is confirmation. The AEW TV deal is tied to the basic cable channels TNT and TBS and expires at the end of 2027 or 2028, depending on what becomes of the contract's fourth year option. At that time, AEW programming is likely to leave HBO Max and join the upcoming Turner Sports streaming app. Of course, 2 or 3 years is an eternity in the current media landscape, and so much can change in that time frame. This is the point that all these fucking aggregators are not able to pick up, because all they do is look for the fucking sensational headlines and are not able to use their fucking brains, especially when someone who actually works in Hollywood is telling them, hey, you know what? The media landscape in 3 years is, it might as well be 50 years. Because, boy, anything can happen, right? That's essentially what he's saying here. When AEW, when Warner Bros. decided to renew AEW, did any of you expect that Warner Bros. Discovery and Netflix would fuse? Of course not. It's insane out there, boys and girls and everyone in between. It really is insane. Let's continue. There's even the possibility of a non-exclusive arrangement in which both HBO Max and Turner Sports stream AEW events. Perhaps the former gets the pay-per-views and the latter episodic TV shows. See, everyone has to calm the fuck down. And everyone has to fucking read articles once in a while, which I sometimes feel it's a fucking public service that I do here. Yes, and I did say public, okay? And I corrected myself. I said public, and then I was like, but I said it. I can't take it back. Toothpaste is out of the tube. You all heard me say public, and you can make fun of me for saying public. I just combined two words. I'm trying to do things expeditiously here as fast as I can. So I'm like, might as well merge words together and create new words. Who knows? Maybe public will become a real thing this year. Maybe you just heard the first use of the word public, word of the year 2026 in Merriam-Webster. Who knows? Let's continue with this public service. Though WBD and AEW will never say this aloud because at a less than 10% stake, they don't legally have to, WBD owns a minority position in the latter. That position will remain with the Global Lineal Networks piece following the split and spin and the close of the Warner Bros. Sale to Netflix, a source tells The Hollywood Reporter. All Elite Wrestling is majority owned by Tony Khan, the son of Jacksonville Jaguars billionaire owner Shad Khan. This was the big reveal. This was the thing that a lot of people speculated on, that Warner Bros. Probably had some level of ownership in AEW, right? That very likely they did. And no one could confirm it, right? But you had a guy like Brandon Thurston over at WrestleNomics who, every time that, he'd talk about landing spots and, the setup with AEW and whatnot, he'd always question. He himself would be like, hang on, there's probably some kind of ownership deal that exists. There's probably that Warner Bros. Probably has some kind of deal here in which they have some sort of ownership of AEW. But he never really had any proof to it. He probably had some really good inside sources, at the very least hinting really hard at it. But he was never able to put it out there, right? Well, this guy from the Hollywood Reporter, what's their name again? Tony Maglio. Tony Maglio was clearly able to felt confident enough in his source to say, this is exactly what's going to happen, and has cleared that point up, which then makes so much more sense that Warner Bros. has anything to say in regards to who AEW is hiring or not, and intervened in the hiring process for Trey Miguel. So now there's some things that start making a lot more sense. The investment of Warner Bros. Wanting Phil Brooks to have his own show, like for Collision to be the CM Punk show. You remember that? It was like, well, what? Yeah, what's their big thing here? Well, I guess they have some kind of say. I mean, it's 10%. It's not that big of a say. But Tony Khan often says, he talks about having great partners. He talks about, wanting to work closely and collaborate. So even if it's a 10% ownership stake, you just want your partners to be happy. And they're like, sure, we can do that. Sure, we can do this. Without necessarily having to pull, well, we own 90%. We can do whatever the fuck we want. That doesn't make for really good relationships generally. All right, let's continue the article here. Complicating matters further, AEW is not Complicating matters further, AEW is not technically on the sports side of the Warner Bros. Discovery business. It has always been considered a piece of WBD's entertainment division, save its PR servicing, which is handled by Turner Sports Communications team. I could probably pen 519 pages on that whole thing. When I read this, what this reminds me of? The idea that it was Turner Home Video that was paying for Hulk Hogan's salary back in the day. It was paying his contract. Remember that? All of that stuff, which I think turned out to be complete fabrications, if I'm not mistaken. Sometimes my lore is a little messed up on that level. But, it's kind of like that thing where it's like, no. AEW is on the entertainment side, but we've got the sports people handling this and so on, and they're going to be on HBO Max, but then they're going to end up on the Turner Sports app, and it's like, whoa, Assuming HBO Max still exists as a standalone service and not fully integrated into the Netflix app, at the expiration of Turner's AEW deal, it likely won't put up much a fight to keep AEW. It stands to reason that Netflix, the home of WWE's flagship episodic series Monday Night Raw in the US, and the promotion's premium live events outside the US, because the ESPN app has them here, has little need for AEW. And should Netflix integrate HBO Max into its own service, it may not even be able to carry AEW programming. Though unconfirmed, it is believed WWE's parent company TKO incorporated a non-compete clause in its deal with Netflix, a relic of the old days. I fucking love this man for just that little tidbit right here. Tony Maglio, right? Was it Maglio? Tony, another Tony. We love the Tonys tonight. A relic of the old days. Fantastic. Just goes to prove, right? Just to say, these guys, it's all old hat, these old fucking, goofball tactics, right? Because everything in professional wrestling is some sort of relic of the old days. It's a nice shot there taken. So again, like basically what he's saying is that, if HBO Max stops being a thing, well, it'd be, there's no point for Netflix to hang on to AEW. But let's not forget, in the meantime, Netflix and WWE, they have a revision year that will be coming up before AEW's deal is renewed, right? Where Netflix, because they signed like for, 10 years? Something to that effect. But at the end of year 5, Netflix had the opportunity to, just dump, to cancel, basically, to get WWE off their service if they want to. They have this out clause essentially, right? Like, which is normal. And that, if I'm not mistaken, is at the end of year 5, if memory serves me right. Feel free to fact check me on that, chat. But so, there's so many things that can happen at this point. Netflix might just get sick of paying WWE for the, for that amount of stupid, for that stupid amount of money, right? Because again, like we were talking about this last week when we were looking at the graphs, right? At the charts with all the ratings numbers, not the ratings numbers, but the view time on Netflix. I think that on a global level, WWE's numbers aren't good. I think they're kind of disappointing for a global company. So maybe Netflix is like, they're not so bad, but for the amount of money we're paying, maybe it's a little much, right? That could be a thing. That could legitimately be a concern for them that is just like, no, we can keep you for another 5 years, but you're going to have to cost us much less because, look at the numbers you're doing, right? So that could be an option. They could kick WWE off as well. HBO Max could still be a streaming service, standalone service in and about itself. They're talking about this Turner Sports app. They're going to turn that into a streaming. Turner Sports is going to turn into a streaming. That might be the landing place for AEW. Look, brothers and sisters, I don't know what to tell you. There's just so much speculation at this point. The landscape of media in the United States is flabbergasting at the speed it moves and the size of these mergers. I still like the HBO stuff, not the HBO, but the Warner Bros. Discovery merger. It feels like it just happened still like a year ago. It's crazy. So there's so much that can happen within the next 3 years or so that it's interesting to have like a sort of a view from an outsider to the wrestling business, but who seems to understand at the very least how the media aspect of it is connected and works. So it's nice to have their perspective in here, and I really do appreciate it. And one of the things that makes me feel like he knows what he's talking about when it comes to wrestling media deals is because he mentioned, the possibility of a non-compete clause, and if it's there, well, it's a relic of a bygone era, which means that he understands that what WWE's tactics used to be like. So I have a tendency to trust this person. I feel like they know what they're talking about. They didn't say anything really outlandish. They just set the stage. And I think like the main news to me that we got out of here is the it's not a confirmation, but because it didn't come out through anyone in AEW, but the idea that we have that Warner Bros. Discovery has a 10% stake seems much more real now. Now it does seem like something we can sort of hang our hat on and say, yep, okay, we're getting a confirmation from someone outside the wrestling business, outside of wrestling media, who's like, yeah, no, this is a thing. Seems very confident about it too, even saying it, right? WBD and AEW will never say this aloud because at a less than 10% stake, they don't legally have to. They don't have to say anything, but Warner Bros. Discovery owns a minority position in AEW. It all makes sense. And even says that position will remain with the global linear networks piece, which is Discovery, right? Following the split and the close of the Warner Bros. Sale to Netflix. So there you go. I think this was a very interesting article, very illuminating article. I know a lot of people started rubbing their hands together and saying, ha, 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 AEW's not going to make it. And it's like I said, I can't say this enough. I really can't say this enough. Whatever happens, AEW is just going to find another landing spot. If all else fails, they're going to find another landing spot and they are going to be okay. AEW is not disappearing overnight. And I would not be this confident in saying this if Tony Khan was not part of a billionaire family that owned major sports properties in the NFL and the fucking Premier League. Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Like, these people are making so much money. If it were Panda Energy who was behind this, then I'd be a little more worried, but this is not where we're at. And here's the other thing. TNA, you want to talk about TNA? TNA has been around for years. And for years and years, people have been calling on its death, saying it's finally happening. And it is still around. It is not dying. Not only is it not dying, it has secured a national a spot on a national network for the first time in about a decade. Like, what are we talking about here? Let's not pretend that AEW is going to die because of this. And look, the landscape, there's a very good chance that the media landscape is going to be somewhere completely different in the next 3 years. We've got some stuff to talk about in regards to New Japan Professional Wrestling. There are people that will be leaving the company that will be indeed hitting the bricks. This should come as no surprise, but there are some names that are a little surprising. Some not as much, but these are rumors that have been going around and that are finally sort of bubbling up to the surface. There's a lot more people talking about it. As I mentioned not that long ago, I don't deal in scoops. Like, my job, my self-imposed job is not to what's the word I'm looking for? Is not to break news. That's what I'm doing. Or to give scoops, right? I prefer to wait till the things come out and then comment on them. Maybe sometimes I'll insinuate some things like I might be doing in this segment here tonight. But it's like, there's stuff here that had been going around, stuff that kind of took a lot of people by surprise. And this is where we're at right now. So there's departures. There's people leaving. There's people leaving New Japan. Evil is probably the biggest name to be on his way out. I think I think it took a lot of people by surprise, right? I think it took a lot of people by surprise, but there's been rumors, there's been rumblings like for the past couple of years around January that Evil is on his way out. Do you remember last year? Last year, he was really like acting as if he was done with New Japan. And then he ended up coming back. And remember, he just had a blank t-shirt on. And we all figured, this is going to be some kind of big refresher, something all new. But then it's like, no, he takes off his t-shirt and it's still part of House of Torture because he had a House of Torture t-shirt underneath. Well, this time, it apparently, of course, it's not signed, sealed, and delivered. But apparently, it's very real. He is leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling. And he is crossing the Pacific Ocean to go work with World Wrestling Entertainment. Rumor has it that he is still indeed married to Io Sky. Fuck. I had heard the opposite, that there was no longer a thing. It doesn't matter. The point is that he is in all likelihood, I should say, heading to WWE. And good for him, because look, here's the thing overall with all these departures, everyone except one that we're going to talk about, the majority of these departures are all going to be good for each of these wrestlers, and they're all also going to be good for New Japan. It's going to free some space up. It's going to refresh the company. It's going to change the face of the company. And it's all going to feel so much better. It's just going to feel like a brand new coat of paint where we won't have certain things around maybe to drag us down, to say, we have to do this again. It's good. Movement in pro wrestling is good. And if these guys decide to go off and try something else, rekindle maybe their love of the game or whatnot, how could you not? How could you not get excited for that? Right? How could you not be excited? And look, for me personally, this gets me more invested in New Japan than anything else. Because then I'm like, we've got some big shoes to fill. There's some stuff here that I was not expecting. And Evil, like, don't get me wrong, I hate the House of Torture with a passion. I like, it is go away heat for me. But Evil has always been good. I've always enjoyed Evil. It's just a shame that he was embroiled in the shenanigans and whatnot, right? That's the thing that really bothered me. And what I'm thinking ultimately is that this is why they decided to really go hard on a United Empire heel turn, because there's no more War Dogs, right? There's no more Bullet Club, I should say. There's no more the House of Torture will have no teeth without Evil. What are you doing with the House of Torture moving forward? No Evil, no Sonata. What do you got? You gonna have fucking Show drive the boat? It fucking sucks. It has no more teeth to it. So go with United Empire. Make them a full heel unit. Have Callum Newman decide to really be a bastard and show up and do heelish things like he did during the new Lion Cup earlier this week. So it's like that's clearly the United Empire turn. I think is a clear indication that that we're probably going to see the end of House of Torture too. God bless. But I think it kind of sucks that we're ending the House of Torture and Evil is just going to disappear as well, because I think Evil's a really good brawler. It's just we've forgotten that he's a good brawler, that he's good at what he does because of all the nonsense. But I'm not disappointed I'm not disappointed on the front of House of Torture coming apart. There will be people who will tell you, House of Torture, it's a shame that it's coming apart because it was good. It was never good. Let me say that again. It hadn't been interesting or good in a fucking long time. It got old so extremely fast, and they had been doing the same thing with House of Torture over and over and over again for years. Always the same thing. Always the same, someone matches going on, and then, there's a variety of things, but then it's like, Dick Togo rings the bell, or Dick Togo and fools the guy into thinking the match is over, or Dick Togo turns the lights out in the building, or the people run in with wrenches and push-up bars and whatever, and whiskey bottles. It was all infinitely frustrating because it was always the same thing, and you could never, ever, ever enjoy a match because when House of Torture was involved, because you knew it was just going to devolve into bullshit. I'm welcoming this change. I'm welcoming good for Evil if he's leaving. I think he's been stale, and this is a good way for him to freshen things up for himself. He's going to go make some big money in the US, and he's going to try something different, and all the more power to him. Now, is WWE going to use him? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But I think Evil has a legitimately good chance to get himself over, to really get over more than a lot of guys in New Japan, because he's able to do the shtick. He's very much influenced by he's very much influenced by the stuff that happens that is very sports entertaining. Look, the home run swing that he does with the chairs, right? He can 100% get that over in WWE. That will 100% get him over. People are going to love that. All the more power to him, and that really does. And you can already feel it, where it's like it's making things feel a little lighter already. You're like, oh, this isn't so bad. now that he's gone. Another guy who is reportedly on his way out is Gabe Kidd. Now, I think you have to be an absolute dunce to think that Gabe Kidd is not eventually going to come over to AEW. I think it's going to happen fairly soon. I think there's going to be an announcement. There's going to be something that's going to happen, and Gabe Kidd is going to be announced as a new signee for All Elite Wrestling, and he's going to come do this in North America for a while. Now, Gabe Kidd is the exception in regards to the things that I said at first, where I'm like, where none of these people leaving is really all that significant. It's not really that big a deal, right? I think in the case of Gabe Kidd, that could potentially be a big deal, because I think Gabe Kidd could have been a big star in New Japan. I think he had the stuff and the support and the drive and the energy to do it. Hell, he showed it last year, very briefly, from the end of December right up till January 5th when he fought Kenny Omega. He was showing that he had his full interest in New Japan and that he wanted to be Mr. New Japan, because I have no doubt that he loves the place. I have no doubt that he loves wrestling for New Japan Pro Wrestling. But here's what happened last year. New Japan did, as we say in the business, jack shit with Gabe Kidd. They had a guy that the Japanese audiences had gravitated to, accepted, because he decided to wear the lion mark on his sleeve, well, on his shorts, but you get it's a phrase, okay? It's a turn of phrase. Bear with me. But he had decided to endorse to become the bearer of the lion mark at a time where people were looking for someone to gravitate to, because everyone was gone, because none of the new guys were stepping up. Then suddenly Gabe Kidd and, the Reiwa 3 and whatnot, Then suddenly Gabe Kidd shows up out of nowhere and is like, I'm going to carry this fucking promotion on my back. And then they do. He has the match with Omega. He has a great time limit draw with Yota Tsuji. And then that's it. Oh, sure, he was global champion, but what kind of reign did he have? And yes, it was unfortunate that he got injured during the G1. That's an unfortunate circumstance, right? And I get that. But nonetheless, New Japan chose to not do anything of real significance with Gabe Kidd. And you can feel right now that there's a bunch of guys who have leapfrogged him in the booking, Umino, Yuya, Yuto Ice, Oscar. These are all guys that just leapt. Callum Newman. These are all guys who all leapt who leapt much further than he did. I think there's a reason right now that he's been fairly silent on New Japan, on New Japan TV. And look, your eagle eye Warren Hayes here has been pointing out to you very, very gently. He's been dropping weight. He's been cutting weight. Been looking good. He doesn't, he's not the burly guy he once was. He's slimmed down quite a bit. He's not like suddenly 150 pounds. Don't get me wrong. He's not, he's not Alec Price. Okay. But he has cut weight tremendously. And I speculated, I told you all. Not saying that this was a requirement, but maybe someone in AEW said, hey, you know what? It'll probably be easier for you to get over on American TV if you get rid of some of the excess. He took it to heart. You look at Gabe Kidd in January of 2025, and you look at Gabe Kidd at the end of 2025, and you're like, wow, okay, transformation. I think he knows what he's doing. I think it's pretty clear. Dual contract. Look, there is a chance, right? There is a chance, but I sincerely doubt it. I think that the idea of I think the concept of the dual contract is something that is going to work better with a partner like CMLL than it will be for New Japan, if only because New Japan needs guys for entire tours most of the time for things to really get over and work. And maybe AEW can't work with that kind of stringent requirement, right? And plus the distance. Like there's a difference between hopping on a flight to Mexico City from wherever in the continental United States versus, hopping on a flight from wherever in the continental United States all the way to, Tokyo or Kyoto or wherever the fuck else, Osaka, wherever there are airports. I'm just throwing names out there. Hiroshima, I don't know, wherever they have the airports, right? So I think this has the potential to be a poor decision by New Japan to let him go. But if I'm Gabe Kidd, I myself am like, fuck this. They did jack. I had an excellent match last year with Kenny Omega. I tore the house down with Kenny Omega. I established myself. I had momentum, and this company decided to do jack shit with him. Well, he's more than entitled to hit the bricks, especially if Tony Khan is waiting for him, which he clearly is. A guy who's rumored has been to be leaving it, but there is also no confirmation is David Finlay. I think we've been getting the David Finlay is leaving rumor for like every year for the past 3 years at this point. But this year they feel a lot more serious for some reason. I think the rumors of his departure are a lot more serious. Now the question is, where would he go? And everything seems to indicate that he'd be going to WWE. His dad has the connections to get him in. His little brother's already there. There might be something to do there, right? I don't think this is a guy who goes and debuts on main roster, but I could be wrong. In any extent, this is also a guy who feels extremely stale. You know, they did all sorts of stuff with Dave Finlay last year in 2025, and and you felt like they were just going through the motions, where it's just like, oh, here we go again, Dave Finlay, type of thing. And it's like, man, and I like Dave Finlay. And I've liked Dave Finlay particularly for the past 2 years, 2024, 2025, right? I felt like he had really grown into something really interesting, like this, the sneaky power guy, just using his power to bully people when you're not expecting it. It was really, really tremendous. But here's a guy that a lot of people had earmarked that he was going to be IWGP World Champion because Gedo decided to side with him. And, Gedo usually, cornering a dude usually means that guy's been earmarked for a world championship, and it did not happen. It just didn't happen. He never got the main title in the company, and it seemed like his ceiling was the global title. It seems like that's where he was capped, and that he just wasn't going to push through. Now, this is a guy who's still young. He's in his early 30s. He still has a lot to give. He's powerful as hell. He's a very good pro wrestler. To me, there's still a question of sky's the limit here. I think there's a ton of stuff that you can still do with Dave Finlay. I'm very excited for him and his next moves. If he goes to WWE, well, I wish him the best. I won't see him wrestle ever again. But, it's like if that's what he does, go give it a try, right? But he was stale. He had hit a very clear ceiling in New Japan. In his shoes, I'd probably do the same. I'd probably want to hit the bricks as well. So we'll see what happens. And look, with Dave, I know like everyone is merged into what do they call it now? Unsanctioned unaffiliated, unattached. Anyway, the Yota Tsuji group of the old LIJ guys and the War Dogs. Bullet Club is officially dead. Once David Finlay leaves, Unbound Co. Thank you. Once David Finlay leaves, he is officially Bullet Club is. It's not just officially dead. It is buried with 12 pounds of dirt on top, dead. That's how dead it's going to be. I wish I could talk wrestlers and promotions into all following the shorter models, more jumping promotion model of the territories. Yeah, I mean, honestly, wrestling would be so much more exciting if that was that. But guess who decided that wasn't going to happen anymore? Like Vince McMahon killed that, and then it's like I'm the only show in town. So it's created battle lines, it's created divisions where you can't jump to somewhere else without it being a statement. And in fact, it's just like it's such a sane thing to do. It's like at your work, if you're working your day job and at some point you feel like you've hit a ceiling and you're unfulfilled, you pick up the phone, you call somewhere else. You're like, hey, are you guys hiring? You go, you do the rigmarole, you apply, and you start off fresh somewhere else. And maybe it works out and maybe it doesn't. But you will always have the credit of going off to try something else, right? It's really dumb. It's really dumb. We already knew about Sonata and his particular situation with his neck fusion surgery coming up. At least that's what's been reported. Apparently he's still hanging around. Like he's not gone from the company, right? He's probably the hiatus that everyone was talking about was an in-ring hiatus because he's still showing up. He's still backstage. He's not gone from the company. Maybe he's just waiting for his surgery, his surgery date to go have that done. Could be a lot of things. And, maybe he's just transitioning to another role. But it still sounds like Sonata will not be wrestling in a New Japan ring anytime soon. And people wonder if he will be wrestling at all because it's very invasive, very significant. It's a very significant procedure that he's going to have done. So we'll see what happens with that. But there's maybe a little update on his side where we had previously talked about Sonata just flat out, being done with New Japan and going to get the surgery. Well, he's not done yet, at the very least. He's still hanging around. He's still hanging around. Now, here's a name from New Japan that apparently is ready to move on as well. It's this guy, Hiromu Takahashi. Now, apparently, so this is what we're collecting in regards to Hiromu right now. On one end, I've heard that he's just like completely done, that he's done with New Japan, and he just wants to go off and do things elsewhere, which is not really surprising when you consider that New Japan, that his LIJ brothers, right? His Naito, which is, he is very close friends with Tetsuya Naito. He's pals with Bushi, and they're out there doing their thing. They're over there in Noah and whatnot. And, he's been wrestling in Noah. And if you've watched Hiromu wrestle in Noah, he's been wrestling with a little more verve, with a little more oomph. Like, you can tell that that Hiromu in Noah is much more energized. He is much more into it than whatever's happening in New Japan. I think he's tired of New Japan. So there's that end where it's like where suddenly we're hearing, oh, Hiromu's on his way out as well, and probably gonna go join his Los Ingobernables de Tokio, no, Los Tranquilos, right? De Japón. However, I've also heard that he might not be done with New Japan. That he might be like, he might still stick around New Japan, but be used a little less so that he can wrestle more elsewhere, such as Professional Wrestling Noah, where he is still currently the junior heavyweight champ, isn't he? As far as Los Ignoramuses. But it's like, I think that's what it is, that he's still the champ. But that would be the thing. So there's also that running around where it's like Hiromu might not be done. Right? So I don't know. I couldn't tell you exactly. I couldn't tell you with confidence what exactly his next move is. But best case scenario, I guess. Let's take this from New Japan's side. Best case scenario, he's used on occasion. He still sticks around. Still has some kind of contract, but he's not full time. Worst case scenario, he's just gone. It's either or. And here's something very interesting too, that went against a ton of things that I had heard in the past, or that at least was speculated, right? There's a lot of people that speculated that, because there had been rumblings that Hiromu wanted to go heavyweight, and that New Japan didn't want. New Japan didn't want him to go heavyweight because they saw him as an important as an important star in the junior division. The guy was holding it all together. He's very charismatic and whatnot. So he said, so it's like, we can't lose him in the junior division. Plus, there was also the theory that they didn't want to have him transition because when you're a heavyweight, you make more money, and New Japan is not exactly flush for cash, so they were shutting him down. Turns out Hiromu might be the guy who had saying, no, I don't want to do heavyweight. It turns out he might be the guy who was just like that. It might turns out that New Japan had offered it up to him, and he shut it down, where he's like, no, I'm going to see this junior thing through. I'm going to do this my way, which is a little surprising to me. A lot surprising. A lot surprising. I don't know, man. It's an interesting little twist there. But look, you can see in the matches that Hiromu has had just this year in New Japan, in Noah. You look at those and you're like, oh shit, Hiromu still has it. He still has that bite, you know? Whereas in New Japan, you see him wrestle and it's like, you know, uninspired. It's very it's very rote. Feels like he's going through motions. He's not really trying. The energy levels aren't there. So good for him. And again, this instantly creates a freshness in the junior division because you don't have Hiromu Takahashi, who has been the ace of the division, still hanging around with his specter there, you know, hanging over the division going, you know, oh, well, you have to push me because I'm the top guy or whatever. You know, not that he said that or that, you know, the bookers feel that they have to push Hiromu or whatnot. It's all very good. Like, these are all good decisions that are happening right now. Like, what if he does leave and we'll have a best of Super Juniors, a Hiromu-less best of Super Juniors? When do we go back in time for that? It's been a fucking long time since we've had a best of Super Juniors without Hiromu in it, and that makes things all the more interesting, I think. All this is really interesting. All this is really, really interesting. That's the update on the Japanese departures, or the New Japan departures, who is being rumored heavily as leaving, who is leaving, allegedly, and who might be. You know, these are all still. Most of this has not been confirmed. Well, I think though the Sonata thing has been confirmed that he was going on hiatus, but everything else, you know, and there's still other people. You know, the names aren't out there yet. So again, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to steal anyone's spot here, but there are still names floating about. Names that haven't been around in a while, you know, that you're like, oh, that's right, that they might be on the chopping block as well. So keep an eye on all of this. Of course, it continues to evolve. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, it is confirmed. Evil is leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's not speculation. It's not us scratching our chins and wondering, or it's not another work of his like he did like last year or the year before that. The company, being New Japan Pro Wrestling, announced on their website Sunday that the former IWGP World Champion will be leaving the promotion at the end of January. Here's what they said. After careful consideration and discussions with New Japan Pro Wrestling management, Evil, who has been a long-standing member of the New Japan Pro Wrestling roster, will leave New Japan Pro Wrestling at the expiry of his contract at the end of January 2026. We apologize to the fans for the sudden nature of this announcement. There was nothing sudden about it. New Japan Pro Wrestling wishes Evil the very best in his future activities. Very close to a future endeavors. Very close. Well done, Chris Charlton. Well done. Last week, Brian Alvarez on Wrestling Observer Live noted that there had been strong rumors that Evil was heading to WWE. The Super J Cast reported on the same day that Evil had given notice to the company. He last wrestled on January 20 with the House of Torture, losing to Aaron Wolf, Master Wato, Toru Yano, and Yo in a multi-man match. Dave Meltzer on social media also noted that Evil was heading to WWE. Takagi Watanabe started as a young lion back in 2011 and following his excursion returned in 2015 using the Evil moniker, first aligning himself with Tetsuya Naito and Los Ingobernables de Japón, founding member. In 2020, he turned against Naito and joined Bullet Club, later forming the subgroup House of Torture. At that year's Dominion event, he defeated Naito to win his one and only IWGP Heavyweight title, thanks to interference from Dick Togo. His last high-profile match was losing the Never title to Olympian Aaron Wolf at Wrestle Kingdom 20 on January 4. In addition to the heavyweight title, Evil has also held the IWGP Tag Team and IWGP Intercontinental, Never, and Never six-man tag team titles. So we're closing a book on all of this. Look, last stream we talked quite a bit about the upcoming departures, the possible exodus of talent in New Japan Pro Wrestling this year. That's will be occurring very soon because, it's contract season and it's wrapping up. Expect more people, to depart and whatnot. And so, I'm not going to relitigate all of the stuff that we talked about in regards to Evil. It does seem very, very clear now that he's going to be heading to WWE. A lot of people I'm kind of stunned actually that a lot of people seem to think that he's not going to get himself over, that it's not going to work for him in WWE, and that he's going to be like an Akira Tozawa type, where he's just going to do goofy shit. I think he's going to be just fine. I think Evil is going to be, he's going to assimilate really, really easily. I don't know if he's going to keep like the full Master of Darkness gimmick and all that stuff, but he's got enough sports entertainment gimmicks in his up his sleeve that he has already been using in New Japan, that he understands what he needs to do to get himself over, and it's going to work with the WWE crowd, right? Just think of one of his classic spots, right? Throwing his opponent into the timekeeper's table. Well, he's not going to be able to do that in WWE because, the railings are, barricades or whatever the fuck. It's a whole other setup. But nonetheless, that stuff is there and it exists. You've got, it's stuff that he does. The home run chair shot, right? That's something that's going to work with WWE people. That's going to, the fans are going to gravitate to that. And then him talking to a microphone or whatever and going, ha, 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 which I always thought was funny. I don't know. It always made me laugh because it's such a disingenuous, stupid, evil laugh. That's going to get, I think he has more chances to get over than you think. I think Akira Tozawa didn't have that comprehension when he came in. Plus he's smaller. He was just a natural fit to be goofy, to get thrown into a 100% comedy act. Maybe this is going to be Evil's destiny, right? But I don't think it's not going to work out for him in New Japan, in WWE. I don't know. And I want to mitigate what I'm saying at the same time. I'm not saying that he's going to be, a WWE undisputed champion, right? Because that's the real belt. That's the real prize in WWE. They can talk all they want about the consolation prize, right? The World Heavyweight Championship that CM Punk has. That's not the prize. That's a pretender's belt. The real prize is the undisputed title. That's the one that everyone covets. That's the one that management sees like the real prize on top of that. Do I think that's what his ceiling is? Probably not. I don't have a problem seeing him win the pretend belt. But it's not going to happen overnight either, because WWE is not a promotion that just goes ahead and rocket straps a dude. We were just talking about this earlier. They're not going to do that with him. They're going to bring him in and they're going to have him do stuff, and he'll eventually fall into place. That's all there is to it. Whatever the circumstance, and this I'm going to be parroting a little bit. This is a good fresh start for him, and it opens up so much room in New Japan. Now I'm telling you, and I'm being cautious, but New Japan right now has me more excited for it than it has been. Than I'm more excited for New Japan now than I've been in the past year. And I'm saying this in a very guarded way. Because last year, I recall, I was very, very excited for New Japan at the start of 2025. I was very, very excited. Coming off of the big year starting matches, the matches that kicked off the year. Yeah, the shows that kicked off the year. There you go. The Wrestle Kingdom and Wrestle Dynasty and the New Beginning last year was such a great wrestling show. And I was like, oh, fuck yeah, And then the entire year after that was just a series of disappointments. I was so upset. For the rest of the year. So I'm trying to not get myself into a position where I will be opening myself to disappointment. But, Evil leaving, Sonata leaving, Dave Finlay, rumors are that he might be leaving still. Gabe Kidd, same type of rumors. Hiromu Takahashi. These are all spots opening up for a bunch of really talented fucking guys to come in and take those spots. You really feel right now in New Japan that there is a changing of eras, that we're really moving into something else, right? You feel like there's a discrete passing of the torch happening. And I think guys like Evil, I think even a guy like Dave Finlay, even though he's, David Finlay is still fairly young and definitely not up there in age and still has a lot to give, I think. But I think these are guys who who see how the wind is blowing, and they're like, you know what? This is not our playground anymore. I don't belong here. I'm gonna go try and make it elsewhere because I've given everything I could here, and there's not much more to get out of me. I think these are people who feel it. Same thing with Hiromu. These are all people who are feeling a wind of change in this company. And I'm excited for this wind of change. I really hope it happens. I really fucking hope that this is the year where everything sort of flips for New Japan. I really do. Because there's guys leaving. There's guys that I've heard might be leaving still. Guys that we haven't talked about. But, I'm not going to be the one to break the news. I'll be the guy to talk about it. But I've heard rumors. I've heard rumors about all sorts of shakeups. There's a lot of stuff. There seems to be a lot of stuff going on backstage in New Japan right now, which is very, very interesting. Just trust me on that. And when that news does eventually break, when those things do come around, oh boy, we're going to have a field day talking about it. Trust me. But look, overall, it's good for Evil. It's good for New Japan. I hope they're done with House of Torture. I really do. Despite the fact that, look, lots of Japanese fans are kind of coming to grips with the situation and they're like, oh, this sucks. Best of luck to you. But, you can see that they're sad. They're sad that he's leaving. It's crazy. Because, like I said, again, I don't want to reiterate everything, right? But, Evil is a great brawler. He's a very, very competent, very talented brawler. He's just been saddled with a really shit gimmick, doing really shitty things. And I hate all his matches because I hated his matches because there were no matches to be had. It was just like, the fucking clown car every fucking time. But it's confirmed. It's set in stone. He's leaving New Japan. Where is he going to land? WWE? Maybe. Very likely. That all signs seem to point towards that. He's not going to be at the Royal Rumble this weekend because his contract ends in February, right? His contract was at the end of January. So unless it's not like specifically the end of January, right? Well, hang on. We're the 26th today, right? We're the 26th, which means the Royal Rumble's on the 31st. Is that it? Is the Royal Rumble on the 31st? So at the end of January, is it done on the 31st? Maybe the report is just ambiguous enough where we're like, oh, yeah, the end of January. January 31st is the end of January. And then suddenly he pops in. He shows up at the Rumble. But I don't know. I don't know. Will WWE fans, especially in Riyadh, will they even know who this guy is? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. AJ Styles is going to be retiring at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, so good for him. I still think that's really funny. Anyway, sidebar. Moving on. AEW has trademarked a new tag team name called the Brawling Birds. This is on the heels. This is on the heels of big rumors that Jamie Hayter and Alex Windsor are going to be a tag team. And this makes sense, okay? That that Brawling Birds would be their name. All right? It would make absolute sense because they're both from the UK, right? And bird is a term used by a certain type of gentleman to refer to women as birds. Look at that pretty bird, however they use it. So, brawling again sounds, it has that pub fight feel to it, right? And I guess that's what we're doing here. We're putting these two in a tag team. We're putting these two women in a tag team, and we're going to call them Brawling Birds. I don't like the name, and I'm sure, here's the thing. I'm sure everyone is okay with it. I'm willing to bet that Windsor and Hayter came up with it, and it's like, this is going to be our name, right? And quite frankly, okay, I'm going to get this out of the way. I prefer Brawling Birds to, let's say they did a mashup of their last names, right? Like something like Windzader or Hates or something like, which would just drive me up the wall. Okay. So at least the Brawling Birds is an actual tag team name. I don't know why it's so hard to get good tag team names these days. I don't know why it's so hard. Because you could have guys like Davis and Doyle, just so simple and nothing goofy. It's just like they could have been the Hayter and Windsor, Anyway, but they had to come up with this, the Brawling Birds. So at the very least, like I said, I don't hate it as much as if they had done a mashup of their last names. Again, that would have driven me up the wall. I still don't like the name. I get it's the regional flair. I understand everything. Okay. You don't have to hop in and try to explain to me why this works. I get it. I 100% get it. Okay. But I guess my superseding issue over it all is that I would not be putting Jamie Hayter in a tag team. And that's just me. But I would not be putting Jamie Hayter in a tag team right now. And that's very odd to me. I don't know why Jamie Hayter isn't running around right now with a world championship belt around her waist. I don't know why she's not swinging all the way back to get another crack at Statlander and beat her this time. I think, look, here's the real deal is this. The AEW fans love Jamie Hayter. They've always supported her. I think for a very short time in the company, she was the most over woman in that company. Like she had completely outshined Britt Baker, and that caused some problems. But she right up until she was injured, people loved her. She was the most over woman in the company, and I would dare say she was top 5 best wrestlers in the United States, women's wrestlers in the United States at the time, just before she was injured. Her matches were always dynamic and snappy and snug, and she was real fucking good. And she's still very good. She's still great. So my thing is not as much as, it's not as much a question of whether or not the name is one thing, but the thing that I kind of find the most egregious is that the thing I find the most egregious is that we're taking Jamie out of the singles environment to put her in a tag team. I don't know how I feel about that. The cool thing right now in AEW and for a while is to have friends, right? This is a promotion where wrestlers have friends. They're part of units. They're not part of units. They have friends, and that's cool and all. But I think you need someone like Jamie Hayter in your singles mix, because there is such a steep drop off when you take the upper crust of the women's division in AEW versus the rest. I find that it doesn't progress. Like, the drop off doesn't happen steadily. It nosedives. And the upper crust there for me is okay, Toni Storm, Mercedes Moné, Willow, Statlander, Tekla, Megan Bayne, Aminata, of course, when she's healthy, Hayter, Windsor. That to me is really the upper crust of the women's division. And it looks, and don't get me wrong, it is deep, but it's not numerous. There's not tons of women either, and you can blow through these matches pretty quickly because there's not that many people. Because then after that, think about everyone else who's there, right? Who's in the women's division, and there's not many who compete on the level that all of those women that I just enumerated do. There's really, really a steep gap in talent. Oh, yeah, and you can talk to me. You can talk to me about Riho, and I think Riho is. I don't think. Look, she had opportunities last year to get back on the boat and shine, and I think she's a relic of another era in AEW. I think. I don't know if it's her who's just regressed, or if the working standard has raised to a point where Riho now just is exposed. She's just not very good. She can't hang with those women. Hikaru Shida, a lot of you know, I continue to say it, she's washed. I have yet to see. I've been out on Shida for a long fucking time. And despite the protests, I think people, I think there's a lot of fans who massively overrate her. I think Yuka Sakazaki is the same thing. Yuka had a couple of opportunities last year to sort of pop out, and she didn't. It goes down really, really fast. I think we're going to talk about Deonna Purrazzo. Well, I think Deonna came in and she shit the bed. It didn't work out for her. She didn't impress anyone. Everyone was like, wait, isn't she supposed to be really, really good? Because this is really, really mid. And there's and I think that's fair. And then people will talk to me about Serena Deeb and how great she is. Look, here's the thing. If these women were that great, and this goes for the dudes as well. I'm saying women, but these wrestlers, okay? Whatever gender they are, if they were as great as people portend them to be, not pretend, portend them to be, they'd be on main roster. Look at me talk. They'd be on Dynamite, excuse me. They wouldn't be slumming it in Ring of Honor. Basically, barely getting any time on Ring of Honor, which is the case of Serena Deeb, right? If they were that good, they would be on television more. I even had a hot take in the Discord this week. I said, if you were to ask me, I would much prefer to have Robin Renegade up on Dynamite as opposed to Athena. I think Robin Renegade has a lot of upside. She's young. She's been grinding and working really hard, and I think she's improved tremendously. And I will maintain my position, my state when it comes to Athena, which has been this for a while now. If AEW did see something special in Athena, they'd have her, they'd have her back in a flash. She'd be back on AEW in a flash. But when she does show up, she loses. She loses every time. And she's the women's champion, right? The forever champion. This thing that is supposed to be like this great generational accomplishment. She shows up in AEW and she loses all the time. If people really believed in that in AEW and whatnot, and if they really, really thought that she was an invaluable piece of talent that needed to be in AEW, she'd be there. Now, am I saying that she shouldn't, that she doesn't belong there? No, Athena's very good. I think she has, there's details, there's stuff when you start breaking down your matches where you're like, that can get under your skin. But I think she's a very good pro wrestler. I think she'd be better off on Dynamite. But there's got to be a reason why she's not there at this point. There's got to be a reason that's not there. And it's not to keep Ring of Honor above water. Again, I can't say this enough. You're the forever champion of a promotion that nobody watches. Who cares then? There's all sorts of these champions on Cage Match when you start fiddling around who have, titles of promotions right and left and have held the title for like 800 days and 900 days and 1200 days and whatnot. But no one watches those promotions, so who cares? Who cares? I don't know how this became a referendum on Athena all of a sudden, but here we are. Brawling Birds. It's a bad use of Jamie Hayter. That's essentially it. Those are my thoughts about that. Trey Miguel's back is back in Impact. TNA Impact. He's back. Showed up at the tapings, the TNA taping, not taping, but live show. But then it's also taped. So technically even a live show is taped. This show is taped. Why do I make things so complicated? Why do I just go straight to what you want to talk about. You don't have to dance around it. Don't make things all flowery all the time. It's my show. I can do what I want. So our boy here, Trey Miguel, of course, we all know the tale at this point, showed up at the Feast or Fired match, which which is legitimately a fun gimmick. I think it's a fun gimmick for in TNA. I think that's something really interesting that they cooked up. And he ended up winning one of the briefcases. I don't know what. Look, I know Eddie Edwards got the briefcase. Am I spoiling things? This is all spoiler territory, right? Because they taped this week's Impact. Who cares? Okay, listen. This is not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Trey Miguel showing back up here. Let's talk about it. And he also issued a new statement. Let's talk about it here. Let's read this article from the Wrestling Observer Figure 4 Online. Trey Miguel has issued a new statement. He returned to TNA Wrestling on Thursday night's episode of Impact. Along with the other members of the Rascals, Miguel was expected to debut with AEW earlier this month. However, he was released shortly after signing with the promotion due to an insensitive social media post he made in 2020. Pick your poison. There were a couple of those. Miguel posted to Instagram on Saturday, writing, and here's the quote. I came very close to quitting. My heart was broken. I felt like wrestling hated me, to be quite honest. I hadn't felt a hurt or a loss like that in a very long time. I didn't answer calls or texts, and I spent a little over a week contemplating what's next. I felt like my dream died as quickly as it was realized. But it's in moments like this that God will show you how strong you actually are. But if it weren't for the support system that God has blessed me with, I don't know if I would have been able to turn that decision around. I'm not everyone's favorite wrestler. I don't strive to be. I strive to make kids' dreams come true who had a very hard childhood and only ever wanted to be one thing, a pro wrestler. Words can't describe how eternally grateful I am for @TNA Wrestling for saving this dream for me. And to the ones who encouraged me to stick it out, I will forever be in debt to. If you supported me through this, I love you. If you didn't, I still love you. There's no room in my heart for hate. Now, with that being said, I have to show the world what I'm made of, and I'm just thankful to still have that opportunity. Miguel returned to TNA Wrestling in the Feast or Fired match on Thursday's show in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was one of the 4 wrestlers to win a briefcase in the match, the others being Eddie Edwards, Steve Macklin, and Eric Young. TNA will reveal who received which briefcase on next week's episode. As for Zachary Wentz, Desmond Xavier, and Myron Reed, they have yet to make their AEW in-ring debuts, but they appeared in a backstage segment on last week's Collision. So this all happened very, very quickly, right? And made, it all happened very quickly because within a week, Trey Miguel was hired by by AEW, pardon me, and then was fired. And then took to social media to say, I'm taking a break. Don't tag me. Don't reach out to me. Please respect my privacy. And, which led people to believe, wait, is something really serious going on? And I saw all sorts of speculation. People, I heard that he had family issues. I'm like, okay. You don't get fired from a wrestling promotion because, I don't know, because your mom's dying or whatever. You know what I mean? You don't get fired for that. I believe that's illegal. So, it's like, I know a lot of people made fun of the situation. Was like, oh, you're supposed to take a break and now you're already back. Listen, I can only sympathize with the guy, really. Here's one thing. Don't forget, Trey Miguel, if memory serves me right, was not working in TNA with a contract. They had chosen, I can't remember because there's 4 guys, right? So I can't remember exactly the situation, but he was either, I think Wes Lee, Desmond Xavier, right? He was working TNA without a contract. He was basically on a per appearance thing. And I guess Wentz and Miguel were working, their contracts had come up on December 30th, right? And there was no renewal there. They didn't renew. So Trey Miguel was essentially out of a job. Then he gets the call, like all 4 guys together, to go to AEW. And let's be honest, let's be completely real, okay? I know there's no TNA is the number 2 promotion in the United States goofballs in the chat right now, okay? I know that. I mean, there's goofballs, but there's none of that grifter class of goofballs, right? He gets picked up by a hugely successful televised wrestling promotion where he's going to make so much more money than whatever he was making with TNA Wrestling. And he's going there with his boys, right? Regardless on how you fall, in regards to the gimmick, the Rascals thing, whether you like it or not, and so on. They're friends. He goes there, he's going with his boys. They're setting up, and he's all excited. And he signed the papers, because if he hadn't signed the papers, he would not have been fired. And then it just gets yanked right from under him. I'm like, of course I feel shitty for him, especially for stuff that he wrote years ago. Now, like I said last week when we were talking about this, boys and girls and everyone in between, be careful what you write online. Whatever you post online is permanent. Okay? And it can come back to bite you. That's all there is to it. That's just how it goes. So, the things that he's posted about in the past, whether I don't even know if it's clear if it was the anti-Semitic remarks in regards to David Starr or if it was the homophobia post, whatever it was, it circled back, bit him in the ass, and it sucks because I would argue that when you're posting this kind of bullshit in 2019, 2020, I mean, it's the internet, it's nonsense. And, I think there is opportunities for growth. And I think there are opportunities to change. If he says that he's not the same person that he was and so on and so forth, well, so be it. But someone in Warner Bros. Decided that they didn't want to deal with this. So no, we don't want this guy in the company. They did some due diligence. They found some bad words on some of his posts and they figured he's not worth it. Let's cut the ties. And I've saw arguments. I was like, well, if this had been a bigger star, if this had been if this had been a bigger star who had posted really awful shit, he wouldn't get fired. And I'm like, of course. I mean, yes, it's unfair, but yes, So look, I mean, I think him showing up on TNA is good for him, and it's good for TNA as well. It's of course, he's going to have a job. He is currently in the midst of some of the biggest buzz of his career, and TNA sort of, snaps back at AEW, who came in to swipe up these guys. Well, they can at least snipe back here and take them back, and that creates some goodwill for them. Objectively, I wouldn't want you to try and challenge me on that. I think you'd be wrong. So good for him. I mean, look, it sucks that he probably, that he was unable to go through on his dream and hit the big leagues, whether it was WWE at the time or AEW, right? But at least he still has a job. And this is why a place like TNA, and I can't say this enough, this is why I always think that the WWE Association stinks. A place like TNA in the American wrestling ecosystem is important. I think a third place to land, that isn't as obscure as, let's say, MLW or the NWA. I think it's a perfect place for him, and I'm happy for him. I'm sure. Look, he seems very grateful in his post, and it sucks. It's legitimately sucks. So I cannot but not feel bad for him. And that's your advice. This is the cautionary tale, folks. Be careful what you post online, because it'll come back. And that about does it for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you all so very much for being here. If you haven't already, look, may I interest you in leaving a like, in a subscription on YouTube, a 5-star review, a 5-star rating. All of those things would be tremendous. I'd appreciate it a great deal. I will be back tomorrow, Thursday, with the AEW Dynamite review and a live stream, the live stream that I was talking about at the start of the show. You could hop on over and join us and have a good time. Otherwise, we'll be back next week without fail. Well, maybe with fail, but at the moment of recording, without fail, we will be back next Wednesday for another edition of the podcast. Thank you all so very much for listening. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time.